Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Saturday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and we are live and unscripted on this third day of November here in 2018. So, hope you guys are having a great weekend, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. And, of course, I'm not coming to you alone. We've got all kinds of fun and lined up for you. But first and foremost, let me introduce my good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard. Welcome to the show, Don.
Hey, woohoo, we're here, yay, Friday, Saturday.
Whatever day it is,
Go
welcome to the
Saturday.
show, Don.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think tonight is daylight savings time as well,
that's
so
right, yeah.
don't forget to set your clocks because the world changes
Do
by
I
an
get
hour.
to sleep in an hour?
I don't know how, it's fall back. So, yeah, I guess you do gain an hour as it works out.
That
So,
doesn't mean I'll sleep an hour.
well, that's I have no input on your biological functions, Don. I'm just bringing you the facts. So,
Gotcha.
but hope things have been good with you, brother. I'm glad you could make it tonight and be here. It's always a pleasure. And of course, it's a phenomenal night tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because our guest tonight was someone who first entered the portal a couple months back and really cooked a
Wowed
lot
us.
of bacon, is
Yeah.
all I can say. She brought some really cool things to the table and some amazing insights and experiences. And as soon as she was done with the show,
People are like, more.
I was inundated with people going, "When's she coming back? When's she coming back? Oh, that was a great show. When is she coming back?" And we had scheduled one other return, but we had to cancel that due to unforeseen circumstances. But she is finally back tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and joining us here on the Portal live. I'd like to welcome our special guest, Miss Shel DIon. Welcome to the show, Shel.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, thanks so much for coming back. And like I said, a lot of people have been waiting anxiously for this moment, so I'm just really thrilled that you're able to make the return tonight. And the last show was just intense. It was really cool. I've not personally heard of anyone who approaches this like you do and has the experiences that you do. And I think it left a lot of us with like, wow. It was like understanding a whole lot more about a phenomena and at least a different side of it than most people are ever aware of. And so it's just such a thrill to have you back.
Thank you. That's been my whole goal is to, with research, I guess you could call me more of the behavioralism study than anything else, because I want to understand all of these creatures, all of them that I've dealt with. Excuse my voice, that time of year. Anyway, I that's been my, I'm so glad that people are, you've reached out to people and they're listening and they're taking what I say as something serious and something that we should all know about. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's so many people that go about their daily lives just plugged in, and they don't realize what's just right there. Mm-hmm. So that's really what drives me.
Well, you do a phenomenal job at it, and I just think it was really neat because it just is such a unique view of what would otherwise be a subject that's, it's a bunch of tracks, it's a bunch of hair, it's maybe some tree structures and sticks and stuff, but you've come at it from a whole different perspective. You've had encounters, you've had conversations, you've had relationships, and the last show we covered a lot about the Bigfoot. Yep. And there was so much that we were able to cover, but there's so much more that I don't know if we could ever do enough shows to get all of the information, but I just am thrilled that this is the forum you chose to bring it to.
Thank you. Yeah. I was going after the book thing and trying to get that done. And, that'll take some time. I've had some things happen to me and medically and stuff that I've called myself retired now. I can't go out there and do what I used to do. I can approach it differently and still enjoy it. It's right in my backyard, but going around and going to the places that I used to go and hiking and all that stuff. And, I was really depressed at first, but then I started thinking, you know what, I've brought to the table more anybody else out there.
Mm-hmm.
And clear pictures, with expensive cameras and stuff. And it's just, you know what? I couldn't bring more evidence than I already have. Why keep going after it? It's time to slow down, enjoy, at this point where my kids have become adults and, they're going to be starting their families and things like that. And there's just things in life that I need to focus on that fulfill me as we get older and, moving on, moving to a different home, maybe to a different state, changing my geography up. And maybe that'll still allow me to, from a distance, do the behaviorism of all this stuff and keep that going. But as far as going out there and beating down the trails anymore and risking my life and stuff, to get it to people. And I think I've done that. I think I've accomplished that. And it's time to move on to some of the other things I enjoy in life. But I want this knowledge out there for everyone. And that's really why I got in contact with you. I want this to be the journal of these different cryptids. I want to come back and talk about the rake and some of the other things that are out there that people are terrified of, and they should be. But tonight, keeping it to the canines. That's my goal, and trying to help people understand, because it's gotten so confused with other people that really haven't been in the field, have labeled as type this, type that. And it's real sketchy, real confusing for people. And I want to try and clear that pathway of where their thoughts are going and what they're trying to wrap their head around.
Mm-hmm. And, the thing that I thought was really breathtaking, and we just touched on it a little bit in the last show, and that's, of course, the subject for tonight's show, is the distinction between the canid types. And there are, from what you've explained, some immense distinctions. Like people report, the term dogman has just been kind of a blanket term. It's just...
It's very broad.
Yeah.
And so it covers up a lot of species or a lot of... I don't even know what you want to classify them as. But cryptids, we're just going to say that is the blanket statement. Cryptids. And, when people have an encounter, I will say this from experience, they get usually just few split seconds of it, really, because the cryptids are so good at keeping themselves hid and, out of our way as much as possible. But when they do get caught, that's when bad things happen. And it doesn't always have to be bad. And if I can give them knowledge that they haven't had people that love the outdoors, people that go hiking, and they've been terrified by the howls they can tell is canine. And you hear the stories of dogmen, and all of a sudden dogmen because everything that they've seen or because it was canine. And there's very, very distinctive differences between what I call dog soldier, which to me is the true dog man. And then you have what we classify as the wolf creature or the wolf people, because they will hang with the Sasquatch people. And I've had a lot of interactions with them. They're funny more than anything. Watching their youth is... And, taking my big dog out and watching them wanting to play and, their family unit holding them back. And it kind of sometimes, and I hate to say this, but it makes you see a puppy that's wanting to play, because really that's what they look like as the young. When you get into the wolf people, you get into something that has straight legs generally. Some of them can have a little bit of bend to them, but as they grow, it straightens out a little more, and they stop running around on their toes so much. On my page, if you go to the Tree Peakers page, it's a saved post, rather, that shows you right there the footprints of the wolf creature. You have 3 toes, and the bigger they get, it turns into more like a Sasquatch print, but you still have the 3 toes. And so that is their when you're looking at prints, if you don't know the difference between something that's really evil and something that is just pretty benevolent, and as long as you mind your own and go your own way, it's just kind of like the Sasquatch. They live in family units. They work together with these Sasquatch people. And when I first seen it, I did what everybody else did. Why is a dog man with Sasquatch? That was like,
Sure.
so that, you could see where that would just grab my attention.
Right.
But then I realized that in every area that I was, and after coping with all of them and seeing that they mean no harm, they get delight out of learning things from us, like just putting out these lighted pumpkins I have from when my kid was a little girl. I plug those in and just put them in the window and watch them come up to the window and watch them come up there holding their young and showing and looking and give me the weirdest smile. I mean, when they smile at you, you talk about creepy. So you're basically looking at a Sasquatch body with a dog head on it. And for the most part, they're all black. Now, the sun can, do what it does, and bleach them out a little bit. But when winter comes, they go right back to that, that dark color. I have looked at their hair, and it's the same thing as the Sasquatch. You got hollow hair. So they can, this time of year, the Sasquatch are changing colors that kind of blend in with the trees. In summer, they're darker. They blend in with the trees. That hollow hair is what makes them able to do that. And I see the same thing. So there's a lot of similarities that I'm seeing between these wolf people and the Sasquatch and how well they work together and get along. Now, I've also noticed in many different areas that I've researched over the years that when you have the two, when you have Sasquatch and the wolf creatures, and then get out of them, why are they here? Why are, I've never noticed this before. Why all of a sudden do you have these, what you call wolf creatures living with you? And it was like, oh, well, the dog soldier, and that's what they refer to it as, is how terrifying and mean and giant that they are. Well, they've come into the area, and these guys can better fight it. So with that knowledge, I thought long and hard on it. And I thought, if my Great Dane stands up and again gives me a hug, she's over my head. Her head will go on top of mine. And I'm tall. And so I'm thinking, you know what? If she ever turned on me, it would be a fight that she would win.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's probably why the Sasquatch would rather them take on the Dogman than the Sasquatch, because they got the head, the mouth, to fight back, the whole morphology of being able to cope better with that kind of a thing. Now, I had heard stories of the dog soldier, and I'm saying that for a reason, the mean. So when I'm talking and your listeners are hearing me, when I say dog soldier, we're talking mean. When I say wolf people, we're talking benevolent. Usually glowing yellow eyes is common with them.
Okay.
The dog soldier, I'm going to start with a story, if that's okay. I'm just going to go into this. It started last year, this time. The days were getting shorter. It was really chilly outside, and I take my dogs out right before dark, and I try not to take them out in the middle of the night unless they just start, you can't control their bladders. If they got to go, we got to go out there. Yeah. So we moved to where we were taking our dogs only in the front yard, away from the woods, the backyard, and, everything that can bring, and still being careful because it's dangerous. You got to use bright flashlights. It usually takes two of us, and sometimes they do come at us, and you can surprise them with that blinding flashlight or an air horn enough for the other person to get that dog through the door, and you back up and get in too. Right. Many times we've had to go out with a machete or a katana. If they fear anything, it's that.
Oh, really?
Guns are like just unless you've got a huge 50 caliber that could just put off 1,000 rounds and real quick, a gun is not going to do anything for you. It's just going to make them mad, because I know so many instances of so many witnesses coming to me saying we were shooting them and it was just bouncing off you could see the hair move, but they just didn't even slow them down.
Yeah, I've heard that as
And
well.
so-
Many reports that way.
Yeah. And so this story goes where I'm out there. It's approximately 4:00 in the afternoon, 4:30, and I see this massive print, and I was like mad at myself, like, why did I not come out here sooner? It's right next to my cobblestone wall, and I measured it out, and I looked the tree line over. I grabbed my digital stuff because sometimes they can hide. You can't see them unless you are looking through the digital. So I did that before I ever approached it, and I thought, okay, it's safe. I don't see them out there. So I got down. I measured it. It was 11.5 inches across from side to side. And when I say dog soldier, now we're talking about something that's got bent legs. We're talking about a canine print that looks like a giant dog. So it's 11.5 inches wide, and it was 8 inches tall. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. I got to cast this. But it's cold outside, and I only have like a half hour left of daylight, if that. I can't do it tonight, so I'll have to do it first thing in the morning. So I came in the house. I started searching for my plaster. I was out. End of the season. You're out. You don't go buy any more,
Sure.
because it's not going to do you any good in the snow.
Right.
And so I made a call to my mom, and I said, hey, do you kind of want to go to Hobby Lobby in the morning, do a little Christmas shopping, and I got to grab some plaster. She's like, why are you grabbing plaster? That's my mom. Like, what are you hiding? Pictures of the dire wolf in her backyard.
Oh, wow.
Not once, but twice.
Wow.
And they're amazing. And J.C. Johnson and I were going to break that loose and, everything. And then he passed on me. God rest his soul. Poor man. So she's I want to see this. And I said, Mom, it's dark. You're just going to have to wait till tomorrow morning. She always comes and takes my daughter to school. She spoils my daughter like she did me. So she comes, and it's 7:30 in the morning. And Dave, of course, we've changed shifts. He's gone to bed. I'm up getting the kid off to school, and my mom pulls up, and she's like, show me this print. And I'm like, all right, come here. It's right over here. So she hops out of her car, which is only, probably 15 feet that she had to walk. And she walks over there, and I'm going, oh, my God. And it was completely clawed out.
Wow.
Like, they clawed it out. And I just left scratching my head like, dang. It's so hard to get a print of them. Well, it comes. It does come.
Sure.
But it had its price. And so David happened to get up. I made some coffee, and he smelled the coffee, and so he got up. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, I just need to sit down with some coffee and talk to Mom here and try to explain some things, or why that print would have been scratched out. And he says, I know why it was scratched out. At 4:30 in the morning, he says, you're not going to believe what happened to me. And I said, you went outside by yourself? You didn't wake me up? And he says, well, I didn't want to bother you. You're really peaceful. And I'm like, okay. So he went out with Gracie, the Great Dane, that just would not stop. She wanted to go outside. So he gets her outside, and he said she was pulling him, which she's usually good on a leash, but when she wants something, she can get you there.
Yeah.
So, and our land is a little higher than the driveway, so she kind of leaped off that, and it forced David's body, the inertia of it forced him to land in the driveway. And if you hear the big dog barking right now,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
I put
it's
her in
fine.
her bedroom.
No
But
worries.
things happen at my house all the time, and it gets the dog going, tapping at the windows, things like that.
Sure.
So I'm sorry.
No worries.
Anyway, so Dave says, well, Gracie jumped off into the driveway, and he said, here is this, he goes, dog soldier. He said that was the biggest thing I've ever seen. He says, I froze in my tracks. It was standing right by the back door in front of the garage. Our back door is on the side of the house. And he says, so here I am about 20 feet from it. And he says its head is at the top of the garage, but yet it was still with one leg bent down, like it was kind of relaxed, just waiting for me or something.
Oh,
And he
jeez.
said there was no telepathy or anything goofy like that. He says, but a distinct message like hit him, and he doesn't know how to explain it. He couldn't put it into words. And he said it was, don't mess with my prince. It was a distinct warning.
Oh,
And of course he said it looked down at Gracie like, oh, that's food. And he said he immediately jerked the dog and started to try to get away as fast as he can. He says, and that thing, keeping his eyes on it, he said literally turned into like mist and was just gone.
wow.
And I said, David, that's a far out there story. I'm sorry about the noise.
Oh, that's okay.
If it gets too loud, just let me know. I'll put my hand over the receiver for a few minutes.
No, that's fine.
You can see how it gets here.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Anyway, so that one particular dog soldier, we'd never seen again, never seen the prince the rest of the winter. But when it got spring, it was late April or so. I decided to go out to an area, just try, pass through. The spring rains had pretty much washed away, and now everything, the silt and the sand is becoming visible. And I thought, let's just stop out here on this bridge that's way out in the middle of nowhere, and we'll look and see if we have any, prints down there. And David could go down and cast them. And so we did that, and lo and behold, there's this same print that had been at my house. David measured it. We've got 11.5 inches wide, and we've got an 8-inch tall canine print.
Wow.
Just one, which is very odd because it was in a place where you would leave a track line.
Right.
A human couldn't go out there, plant their foot there, and then get out of it without making a mess,
Right.
So there's just this one vacant print. And then beside it was this little tiny Sasquatch print that is 4.5 inches long.
Oh.
And this is one of the things that they had made clear to me, that the Dogmen steal their young. And then David found another print beside it, like they were traveling together. And he says, I don't know what this is. He says, I'm going to cast it.
Whoa.
So anyway, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Anyway, got to turn the phone off. So as it turns out, there is this, as he's standing there casting these prints, and I was taking photos all around, so I had the comparisons because I was taking the prints all around. And what comes available is a dog man that starts hiding behind this bush.
Oh.
And the bush is very big. We're not talking about no tiny, small thing.
Right.
It's big. And so I'm watching it, and I get the digital stuff out, and David's down there on the ground in this gully with it. So it's not easy. Climb out, and I'm free. Right. It is, oh, my goodness. There's a dog man down here with me. And so I didn't want to really scare him. Open a door. I think it's my daughter.
Oh.
Always inconvenient timing.
Sure. It's we got about 2 minutes before the break, just so you know, as far as your story.
Okay. So you're gonna take a break right now?
Well, we got to wait for the network break. But it'll be about a minute and a half, and then we'll have to go to break.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's incredibly intense. Now, just out of curiosity, when he was going to cast that one, did any kind of warning come through that time? Because the last time it said,
No.
Okay.
No, there was no warning, and it's kind of a long story, and
Sure.
I'll get into that after the break and finish that story.
Oh, absolutely. But it's just incredibly intense, and you experience these things near your home and around your home all the time, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
as it's a regular occurrence, and I'm looking to move just because of it.
Yeah.
I want to get away from here. I've
Yeah.
had it with it. It's just they tear up your house.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it had its price, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get back into that when we get to break.
Sure. And ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go to break here, but as you can tell, the discussion is absolutely intense and amazing, and it's only going to get better from here. So definitely don't go away. But make sure, if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/paranormal portal, and definitely follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/paranormal portal radio. But we'll be back in just a couple minutes here, ladies and gentlemen, for more of The Portal with Shel DIon, the Dogmen and Wolf People. Don't go away. welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal. I'm Brent Thomas, joined by my co-host, Don Longbeard, and we are having a phenomenal night with our special guest, Miss Shel DIon of Whisper Walkers and Tree Peekers. She's on to the show tonight to talk about wolf people and dogmen, and there's quite an amazing distinction between them. But before break, Shel, you were in a story about this encounter you were having, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so we're in this place where it's so hard to maneuver and get around, and like I said, medically I've had some things happen, and there was no way that I could go down there and do it. My back would not let me, and it would be very dangerous, and I don't want to take any chances on injuring myself. So I left David to do it. I decided I would stay on the bridge and I would keep watch. I was using my digital stuff, just, regular stuff. We really weren't prepared. We just stopped by, and we didn't expect to find what we found. And you don't want to leave it when there's so few Dogman castings that are really good. And this is, a really good opportunity. And I learned earlier, that year that if you don't get it when you're there, chances are you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
It's going to get wiped out. So I've got David down there. He's casting that. He finds this little tiny Sasquatch print beside it, and he's casting that, and he finds this other weird print, and it had 5 phalanges, if you will. It was only one of them, and then it had a hook back behind it, like a claw that left also an integrate into the mud. So you're talking 6 appendages off of whatever it was, whether it was a hand or foot.
Wow.
And I do believe, after what we get into and what we witnessed while we're there, that it was alien. And so it was fresh prints. These obviously had just been made. And so I'm looking in every direction. This is where I got my comparison. I was taking photos, making sure there's nothing there. I'm up on this high bridge. I'm looking down where David is in the situation where he's down in the silt and the sand and this mud, and you've got the foliage is up over his head. He's 6'4", so you're talking tall, grassy, bushy areas, and it was approximately 30 yards away. All of a sudden, I see behind this bush shoulders that are 4 feet wide, a head that's got ears on it, and I'm not really catching the face yet. And I'm trying to alert David that you're down there with something else.
Right.
And so I called my mom and I said, I need my good camera. I need the one with the lens on it, the one that stretches out there. Can you go to my house and get it? And this is where I'm at. Bring it to me. And I said, when you do, I said, I need you to bring a shovel and a box, because I'm literally going to take these prints wet out of the ground. I'm going to dig them up wet, not going to approach it like we normally cast. And we're going to take a lot of dirt and mud with us and let it dry at home, because we're in a dire situation here now. And I said, David's down there, and with his hearing impairment, it's hard for him to hear me. Plus, he's got to be looking up and reading my lips from that distance. It was not a good situation. He was not understanding what was there, not so far. And it on the other side of this creek, which is creek in that particular place, is approximately 50 to 60 feet wide, right in that ballpark. He would go on one side and then be on the other side checking the other print, because the alien print was separate from the Dogman print and the baby Sasquatch print.
Okay.
And so his focus is on getting the job done. My focus was, I'm on this bridge, and that looks like a Dogman to me, so I'm kind of moving around, keeping his attention on me, because I don't think he can really see David where David was located. I think David was hid until he crossed to the other side. But I was moving around that bridge, and I would take a rock and skip a rock and keep his eyes on me, making him wonder, what is she doing? What is she doing? Trying to keep his focus on me. I end up paying for that, let me tell you. So he's doing that. My mom shows up, and I'm like, David, are they dry? Are they close to dry? And he's like, just give me a few minutes. And I was like, you don't realize that they're here now. He's like, your mom? And I'm like, no, dog man, dog soldier. I'm doing everything trying to get across to him. The situation he's in is not safe. So when she brought that long range scope, he literally stood up a little bit and it gave me a perfect shot of him. But when I did, you can actually see he had a little Sasquatch on his knee. And that confirmed for me the stories that Sasquatch people had always said, that they steal our young.
Wow.
And they often talked about star people steal their young.
Wow.
Well, I know that these dog soldiers are related to the UFO sightings and have actually witnessed them within relative 500 yards of my house and picking them up. And so I'm like, okay, so this confirms all the other stories that I'm going to share with you here later in this detail here. But the story I'm going to continue is, I look through that scope and I see what I see. And I said, David, if they can't come out of the ground now and go in this box and with the shovel I just dropped, I said, we're just going to leave and leave it go. It's too dangerous. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, I can get this out of the ground. I can do it. So he did. He put them all really, really muddy, probably 6 inches of mud hanging off the bottom of them, and, quite a distance around them. And it took, bringing them home, letting them sit in front of a heater and stuff to get them dry enough you could start cracking away some of the mud. And my mom also stood, and we were far away from Dave as he was putting this stuff in the box, climbing up out of that ravine, and he put it into the trunk of the car. We were over on the other far side with this long-range camera, and I took a couple shots, and my mom says, can I please see through that? She says, I've never seen one up close. And I said, sure. So my mom also looked through the lens at that thing. And so I've got this camera that's got this longer scope on it. So we start to head home, and, out here in the middle of these cornfields and stuff, it's mile to mile to mile. And so we just get a mile, and all of a sudden, I'm not a person that ever has a problem with my intestines. And I looked at my mom and I was like, you got to hit the gas. I have to go to the bathroom really bad. My stomach's cramping really hard. And I was like bent over in the seat, and she's like, what's going on with you? And I said, I don't know, but I feel sick. I feel like I'm going to vomit, and I feel like, number 2 is coming, and I got to get to a restroom. And she's like, okay, we'll go the back way. And I'm hurrying as fast as I can possibly go. And I literally just barreled through the door. And if you ever watch that movie Dumb and Dumber, where the dude's hanging onto the seat, he's going, that's the situation I was in. And then all of a sudden I hear my mom going, Shel, can I use your downstairs bathroom? My mom got it too. Oh. Dave did not. And it was like that thing infrasounded us as something to where we would have to use the restroom extremely fast or something so we would get out of its area. And if you think back, me and my mom were the only ones that touched that long lens camera, and maybe it thought that it was some kind of weapon or something.
Oh, sure.
And so that was why it did what it did. Mom and I both, which have complete different diets, the same identical thing happened to us, and it took us about 2 days to get over it. We were dizzy, nauseated. Wow. We would stand up. It was like we had no equilibrium. We just laid. Wow. The both of us laid in bed like we had the flu. It was horrible. Yeah. And so after, getting the prints and cleaning them off and everything, and searching for this weird-looking print, never could match it to anything out there as far as species goes, whether it was bird or other things that people claim to be alien, things like that. Mm-hmm. But what showed up in the picture behind the bush where the Dogman was and the little Sasquatch, there was this alien figure that didn't make itself completely visible, but you could clearly see these big almond black eyes and this bulbous white head. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know? And so we've had some intense situations just to get the evidence. The evidence is hard to get when you're talking dog soldier. Now, let's get into some of these types.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
I want to erase. I want to take a if it's all on a chalkboard and somebody writes up all these different types that they think that they know, I want to erase it.
Okay.
Because these dog soldiers, literally via somebody that was involved in the government, that was involved in the creation of biomechanical engineer, that worked with not just what he claims as aliens, but the U.S. government is who was employing him until it got to a situation where he had to run for his life, which put him in that situation for just over a year. It happens to be about the time that all of the cow and horse mutilations that started happening in the late 60s.
Sure.
And it was during the Vietnam War era. And he said the government wanted to make something that they could put down on the ground that could take shots and take shots and take shots and still be so ferocious that it would take out the enemy and we would not have so many soldiers lost. But the situation got out of hand. It got out of control.
Right.
And so with all that knowledge, and I'm not going to go into that story because it would probably take up the whole program to tell you the story, but I just gave you enough to know that I've been friends with this person now for 5 years, and nothing leads me to believe that anything they told me would not be completely honest. They're a very spiritual person, very kind, very, very generous and gentle soul. There's no reason for them to make up a lie, contact me and say, you've got to know this because you're out in the fields. At the time, I was out in the fields all the time.
Right.
And so I took what he knew, his information, and then put it in the back of my mind. Well, I started taking, I'm always taking photos and stuff. Well, I started taking photos and logging all of these different dog-type soldiers. And you would know the difference. It is easy to know the difference between the wolf creature or the wolf people and this dog soldier. Because the wolf people, for one, typically are always black. You might find a female that looks like a red wolf. They're usually walking on legs like we have. Sometimes it takes the young ones, they're born with their legs kind of bent, and the older they get, the more they grow, the more their legs straighten out. By the time I would say we would judge a 10-year-old's height, an average 10-year-old's height.
Okay.
Their legs are pretty straight by then. So, and their prints are becoming more Sasquatch looking and not so weird with these 3 toes. And you don't get a pad. You never get a pad with them like a canine.
Okay.
You actually get a ball of the foot impression and a small heel. Not like the hawk where the dog soldier is standing and it rests back and usually like a foot and a half back or 18 inches back from the initial canine print, you will see where a hawk, where they like maybe sat down a little bit or something. So it's a complete different species. So I'm start logging these different types of species of dog soldier, and I'm finding that, and this matched up with the story that this man had given me. They were using anything ferocious that they could find to collaborate making the dog soldier. And it was, I have the hyena, something that looks like a husky. I had things that look like a mastiff. You name it. If it's a big dog, Doberman, a German Shepherd, anything that, a lion, I have the lion face, any of those. And actually the lion face, the pictures I have of him, the very first pictures I got, his mouth was bleeding. He was losing teeth. One of his eyes was like cashed in, like he had been beaten on really hard, and it was yellow and bloody looking. The next time I see him, which is about 8 months later, he had eye glow where the one eye that had been damaged doesn't match his other eye. And you can definitely tell his whole face has got, and he had this tuft of hair that ringed his neck. And now when we're talking dog soldier, their heads are absolutely enormous. Yes, a male wolf people, they can get very, 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 very big. But their head is in proportion with their body. Now the dog soldier is walking on these bent legs, and they kind of got to lean forward to them. They have this strange posture. So that helps you identify what you're looking at too. Typically, they don't keep themselves very well groomed either. And you have tuft hair that's matted, and they just don't take care of themselves and keep themselves groomed like most of the Sasquatch you see. And you find some of their bone tools where they comb their hair, and you'll find a pile of hair or something. Not like that at all. They're rough looking. And so that is when I started going, okay, I've got to keep track of all of the stuff and all of these various different prints. And, I didn't intend to start researching Dogmen. That was not my thing. I'm all into the Sasquatch and their behaviorism, their culture, and all that. But here I am now, well, not anymore, but I was into the same thing with the wolf people, which their culture it's different than the Sasquatch. I mean, they have their things, but they're, tolerant of each other. You do hear a squabble here and there, and one of them gets run off. And they do have this short little tail behind them, not a big long tail. I had one get in my house one night, which was it's terrifying for me, that story. And it shouldn't be. If you want me to elaborate, I will.
Sure, absolutely.
I'll leave that up to you.
The floor is yours, ma'am.
Okay.
Would love to hear everything you want to share.
Okay. All right. I'll go into that story. It was the World Series, not this last year or the year. It was the year that Trump got elected. I think it was that the Cubs won the World Series. Yeah. Illinois, you got, Cubs fans here. So anyway, I was trying to get dinner early that night done, and I walked out to David, and like I said, we're going back a couple years, and I said to him, and he had Gracie out, when she was a puppy at the time, and so I put my phone right away before I went out the door on the mode that I could take a picture, just in case she's doing something goofy, because Great Dane puppies are, I don't know if you've ever been around them, but they're hilarious. And so she's, doing her thing out there, and I happened to look up at the tree line just as I said, David, you need to come in and get washed up. We're going to eat. And when I looked at the tree line, I see this wolf person, people. They definitely have behavior that's not like an animal. So that's why I'm saying this, and that's why I call them that, and I get that from the Sasquatch. So I'm looking at them, and he waves at me. Just the shock of it, my hand had already been in position to take a picture, and I accidentally took a picture of him. I wasn't planning on it. It was not a planned thing, but I got it.
Wow.
And I came in the house, never looked at my phone. It was a cell phone, of course. And I never looked at my phone. I watched the World Series and stuff like that, which went late into the night. It was, around midnight before it ended. We went to bed. I couldn't sleep. I was just laying there, wide awake like I do sometimes. And I got to the point that I thought, okay, well, I'm sleepy. I think I'm going to fall asleep. You know what? I better get up and run and go to the bathroom, because if I go to sleep, I'll wake up in an hour. I'll have to go, and then I'll be up. So let me just get out of bed and go do this. Well, I thought it was funny that my littler dog that stays by my side at all times didn't go with me. I was like, okay, you gonna stay in bed? Are you lazy? And she just stayed there, and she had her ears very taut and straight up, like she was listening. She's got ears like radar dishes. They're huge. And so she's listening to something. And so I took note of that. I owe my dogs. I rely on their behavior
Mm-hmm.
to know what's going on
Right.
outdoors, where I don't have eyes and ears,
Sure.
or the smeller that they have on their face.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's about to happen to me. But at the time, you step out my bedroom door, and if you would have took one step across the hall, you would have been in the dining room. If you turned to the right, you would have took one step, you would have been into my office. The way I have my office set up, which at night you can't see through our windows. It's like Fort Knox, and we have these. It's a big double window, and it has these white wooden shades on them, and the shades are about 2.5 to 3 inches wide.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they close down, they're very tight. It's not like a mini blind that you can see through. You know
Sure.
what I mean? And so it's very white. I had my computer and my desk turned to where when I am sitting there doing a webinar, my students can look over my shoulder and have a ball because they're laughing at the Sasquatch popping up, looking at the windows. They watch them run up and get drinks out of the sump pump,
Wow.
So my students love it. So I kept my computer there. And so the screensaver on the computer literally bounces off that white, lights up the entire room. I could put my makeup on in there. I mean, it was bright.
Sure.
And that's kind of how we keep things around here. Everything's kind of lit. We just don't want to walk into a dark room. You just don't know what you're going to walk into. And so, and there was this corner mirror over in the corner where it's antique. It's on like these lion paw legs, and it's
Mm-hmm.
round or oval, and you could flip it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Am I being clear? Okay. So it's one of those, and it was set off in the corner. We rarely use it, but if we, have something very dressy, you go in there, you want to check out how you look before you
Sure.
go.
Right.
So, me and my daughter used it. So it's in the corner of my office, and there's some chairs in the front of the desk. So there was about 3 feet between the desk and this window. And so the whole window is illuminated. It's white. The paint on the walls in there is a very, very light gray. So it's very, it's like I said, you can put your makeup on in there. It's very bright. And so if you take another step to the left, would be the restroom. And that door in an older home, it opens outward into the hallway instead of in because it's a small bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the remodeled downstairs bathrooms. It's they kept the upstairs more antique, and I had appreciation for that.
Sure.
And in this case, I was almost thankful for it. As much as that door has bugged me, I was thankful in this case, because when I stepped out of my room and took that one step with the left foot, out of the corner of my eye, I see something, and I look, just turn my head a little bit and look, and here is that same wolf creature, which I think was a juvenile because he wasn't giant. He was my height, and he just is frozen like a mime, and he's got his hand wide open. So I can see that they do have kind of like these pads on the bottom of their hands, but nothing like the canine would have.
Sure.
It's a weird looking hand, but yet they've got 5 fingers like us,
Okay.
and they're long, they're pointy, there's big claws. It's very intimidating.
Oh, naturally.
Very intimidating. And so I took the next step, went into the bathroom, pulled the door shut, and you can forget having to go to the bathroom at that point. I totally forgot all about it. And so
Or
I'm
quit
hanging
worrying about
onto
it because
this
it already
door.
happened. Yeah.
I'm going, oh my God, how did that thing get in my house?
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
why is it in my office? And I'm holding on to the handle so tightly, and I don't even know how much time passed because I was in that fight or flight mode,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to do. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm behind this door. My dogs are out there. My cat's out there. David's in there sleeping. He's vulnerable. Oh my God, what action am I going to take?
Right.
And I thought, pray. I started to pray, and I was like, God, please, if that thing comes out of that room and it gets one of my animals, please make it swift so they don't suffer.
Right.
If this is my time or David's time and it's coming at us, please make it swift. Don't let us suffer.
Right.
And I literally pray to God at this point, which is unusual for me. It was, it was a desperate moment, a desperate move, a high adrenaline state, and I then stop and think, I got to make some noise. I can't look suspicious. I don't want that thing to know that I seen it.
Hey, Shel.
So I reach over and I flush the toilet as if I've gone to the bathroom. I turn the water on, fling around my fingers in it, wipe my hands like I've done it, and because that would be routine, and make it think that I have not seen it. And I keep my kitty litter actually in that bathroom, so that the bathroom door is always going to stay cracked a little bit.
Sure.
And so I thought, if it's going to chase anything, it's probably going to be my cat.
Oh, okay. So hold that thought. We're going to take our hour break, and we'll be right back to find out exactly what
Is that
happened.
time for a...
Yeah, it's a cliffhanger at this point. I can't
Okay.
wait to hear it, but we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away.
Everybody likes to play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger boils inside me as their lies keep falling apart. But I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking I am finished with my silence. I am not a stupid toy. No more breaking me with kindness. Just you dance upon my joy. Leading me with empty promise. You're just another fucking mess. Taking off the slice of my sanity. Just make sure that you're well fed. I'm not wrong yet. I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking
I can't see you, Mommy. Where are you? I've never sensed anything like it. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that's different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Paranormal Portal, to our second hour as it goes, and it's absolutely flying by tonight. Don and I, of course, are joined tonight by Shel DIon, who is of Whisper Walkers and Tree Peekers, which is a cryptid research organizations. And Shel is here sharing a story, and right now we're just kind of in suspense as she's relating the story of having a dogman in her house. I'm sorry the break came up. There's not much I can do about it, unfortunately. We can't choose those, but it did make for a pretty suspenseful moment, and I can't wait to hear the end of this story. So go ahead, Shel.
Okay, so just clear, it was not a dogman. It was a wolf creature, and it was a young one, but it was the same height as me. And you know, even though I watched these guys and I watched the behaviors and stuff, it's something I never turned my back on.
Yeah.
And I suggest anybody out there, even if you're dealing with Sasquatch that you may think is your friend or you've been interacting with, sharing, whatever with, never turn your back on any of these things, okay?
Amen.
They are all interdimensional except for the dog soldier or the lycanthrope droids, whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. But they are put together and they run very hot. So I've got this young wolf creature in my house, but it's the same height as me, maybe a little taller. I'm in the bathroom, and I've got all these horrible things going through my mind, as I think anybody would have. I am seasoned for years in the adrenalized states and dealing with, the Sasquatch as a young child on up and stuff. I would be one that could keep control if anybody's going to keep control. And even I was at that point of I'm sweating, and it's I've got the air conditioning full blast in this house right now, and it's like intense. Wow. And so I was praying for please just make it quick. If I'm going to die right now, just make it quick. Right. And so I thought, okay, so I'm going to open this door. I'm going to turn my body just as if I was entering again, so I can get the same good view. And I'm going to be calling my cat, because if it's going to chase anything, I think it would chase my cat. Mm-hmm. Because cats would be more of a fun catch than anything else.
Sure.
And from what I've seen of them playing and stuff like that, they have that animal instinct to run and chase. Mm-hmm. So I open the door, slip out behind, going backwards, keeping my hand on the handle, and I start calling, Linka, where are you? Linka, come on. No Linka. And so I kind of just glance, turn my head a little bit like I'm looking down the hall, using that excuse to then turn my head completely past it and look behind me and call her name. And when I did so, I got a full-on view of him. He's got his hand out in the same position he was in when I went in, and it was like a mime that freezes. Right. Like he's going, if I don't move, she won't notice me. And he ain't thinking about that complete white backdrop behind him and that 27-inch computer screen shining right on him. And I'm definitely sure that is the one that waved at me earlier. There is no doubt. And it took it from, that was a cute thing out there when it happened, to, this is a really, really creepy thing. You know, and I just want out of this situation in that immediate moment, and there is nothing I can do but try to keep myself under control and seem completely normal and act as if I have not seen it. That was my strategy. And so I go into my bedroom to find that Linka is already in my bed. My cat that does not like people, completely unsociable, now she's in my bed. My dog that stays by my side is up on my pillow. So I get in bed, and I'm literally get as close to David as I can without, crawling completely underneath him. And I'm staring at that door, and I've got the cat on one side of my head that doesn't get along with dogs, and she doesn't care in this moment. And my dog is on the other side of my head, and they're both just in an upright sitting position staring at that door. And so I know as long as they're staring at that door, they're sensing or they're knowing it's still there.
Right.
And so I laid there for the longest time, and finally my cat laid down beside me, and then after an hour or so, it was 4:30 in the morning or so, my dog laid down too. And I fell asleep when the sun started coming up. I just dozed off, couldn't take it anymore. And it was like an hour later that Dave got up, and as soon as he got up, I was like wide awake, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what happened, and we've got to go into the bedroom and see, And sure enough, things had been messed with the computer. So I think that maybe them sitting there watching me all the time, showing pictures to my students through the windows and stuff, the way they peek, they're Tom peekers. I think that maybe he thought his picture would be there, and maybe he could do something to change it or something. The mouse was left on. The keyboard was moved. The chair was completely pushed over to the side. David just looked at me, and he just shook his head like, I don't know what to think. The story is just so out there. It's so phenomenal. He's like, how did it get in?
Right.
And I was like, that's my question. How did it get in? An alarmed house. At the time, we had an alarm system going, and everything. Like I said, it's like Fort Knox.
Right.
There's at least 3 locks on both doors. And how did that happen? I know they have this whole quantum physics thing. I've seen it in action. The Sasquatch have done it and blown my mind. Obviously, they have that same quality, or he wouldn't have been in my house.
Right.
So I was creeped out, and if I ever saw him again, which I kept the eye out for him, I was under the intent that I wasn't going to be friendly. I was going to ignore his wave, and I didn't appreciate him getting in my house, and I wanted to make that a clear message that, hey, just because I'm friendly to you guys and I tolerate you does not mean that I'm so much of a tolerance that you can come into my domain. I wanted to make that clear. Well, I never did see him again, and then it got winter, and then this next spring, which would have been last spring, not this last one, but, there he was again, and it was before the foliage was up all the way, and I got a picture of him again, and he had grown significantly, but he was waving the same way, and he had the same markings on his face. He had a little bit of white on his nose that made him distinct, and stick out from the others.
Sure.
And I got a picture of him where he is grown much larger, and he waves identically the same way, sticks his arm straight up, I'm here, and I took the picture and completely ignored the rest of it. This time I actually had a camera that really, gave a really clear zoomed-in picture of him. The other time, was a cell phone picture, but it's still clear enough you have no doubt of what you're looking at. And so that is my wolf creature story, and that is what made me, or the wolf people, stop paying so much attention to them or any focus on them at all, because I realized when they get in my house, it was not a good feeling, and I actually feared what could happen to us or our animals, and definitely my daughter is the priority here, keeping her safe. So I tried to keep, just whatever happens as far as behaviorism, jot it down, take it, observed it, don't get pulled into it too much, don't pay too much attention of it, tension of it, just like I did the Sasquatch early on. You got to approach the things the same ways. It's a tried and true method that I use and have used for years, going with different from one clan to the next. And until you've actually hung out with me, been in my classes, and I've until you go through your dream life states, I am not taking you out in the field, because I have had people run screaming, and it kind of doesn't set well with, these people they're saying, teach your people we're people too, and now I've got somebody acting like an idiot. So I just, I've treated them the same way. It's very cautious. I don't let them, get in my head and get to that point of, oh, they're my clan, and oh, it's mine, all of it's mine.
Sure.
And that's really the approach I've used with them.
Well, I think
so. At this point, I'm going to ask you questions. Do you have questions?
Yeah.
Actually, good thing you did, because we've been getting questions from the chat room, and I was hoping we could get a chance to get some of these answered. So, Don, go ahead.
Right. Well, so Shel, there's been a couple people asking questions in the chat room, and one person wants to know, how do they communicate, and how do they communicate to each other, and how do they communicate to humans or even Sasquatches for that matter?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I have never. I mean, I think that there's telepathy going on. I've heard things, but because they don't, when I have telepathically spoken with Sasquatch, it has always been, they have a protocol that they use to introduce themselves, and I know that it's them. I have heard voices or whatever, and them making claims that, this is who they are, but I didn't trust it and didn't respond, because I know that when you talk about the dog soldier, it's a trickster. It does things, and I just don't trust it. At this point, I haven't studied them long enough. 5 years is not long enough.
Right.
When you talk Sasquatch, I'm 49 years old, and I started having encounters when I was 4. So I am very timid, and I go at this very gingerly.
Right.
And like I said, at this point, retired. Retired means I'm not out there, doing it. And it's it's because of a physical ailment that I have had. It's happened to me. It's something that happened to me. And secondly, at this point, before I had even gone down that road of I've got something major wrong, that I really was taking a back step to it, because burnout.
Right.
I've been doing this for so long.
Right.
And I've got enough out of evidence. If people cannot believe that kind of evidence that I've put out there, and people come to me all the time, my God, that looks like a portrait. It's so good. That's enough evidence, and there's enough video evidence and stuff. What more do people need? What more do they want? I'm not giving them a body. That's ridiculous.
Right.
And I don't think really that it can be done, because the government has had bodies of everything we're talking about. And they've done their testing. And there's been labs that have done testing on, everybody out there. If you're listening, you obviously know that DNA work has been done on Sasquatch and everything else. What come back to me was, Sasquatch was 63% human genome, the DNA strand, mitochondrial, and then 37% something unknown to this earth. Well, it's funny, because somebody said that it was Dogman's DNA that they had, and it came back the same. But once again, I think the lines are so skewed and crossed between wolf creature people and the actual dog soldier. I think that result they had that was 63% human and 37% canine probably came from a wolf creature and not a dogman. Because the dogman, from what I can tell, is mixed up with so much stuff, and they look like they are uncomfortable in their own skin. One of my students that had come to me was really interested in the Dogman, wanted to learn about Sasquatch. I was leery on taking her on because she had so much interest in Dogman, And that kind of energy, when you're in the field, um, if you're putting out that energy, and frequency, it's noted by whatever it is that you're seeking, and so it chooses whether it's going to interact with you or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she had this in her head, and I couldn't get it out of her head of this because she worked in this forest preserve area, and she was seeing these constant yellow eyes and these things with bent legs. And I was like, I've got to see a print to know for sure what you're dealing with.
Right.
All of these things can do the whole eye glow color thing. I said, I need to see a print. And so it was always at night she was working. And so any print she showed me, it just was not good enough for me to confirm what she was dealing with. She went home. And when she went home, obviously, if you look at Google, her home and where she works was a path straight to the mountains. That she literally lives in a valley, and those mountains and stuff, there's waterfalls and everything else. And so one night she's out, she's got woods all around her house. It would be like she lives like I do, only she's more in the center of town, where I'm on the very edge and I have the woods all in my backyard. This town in Kentucky, literally, the houses are in the middle of the woods. It's a small venue, and so there's a lot of cover. And she had the night off, and she started calling my phone until she got me awake. It was well after 2 a.m, and she says, I took a picture of something, and I'm not sure what it is. I want you to look at it. And I said, what do you mean? At night with a flash you took a picture? Because that's asking for it. I'm sorry. I don't do that.
Yeah.
She did. She had the flash on. She took a picture of something. She was in her own backyard having a little bonfire, and she had her dogs out there, but the dogs vacated. They ran in the doggy door, and she's got some big dogs, and they didn't want any part of what was out there. And I said, that should be your first clue. If my dogs go, I go. That means something's not good. So
Yeah.
I said, that should have been your first clue, And so she goes, well, I'm in the house now. And she goes, I didn't get to put my fire out. And I said, well, is it contained? Is it in an area where you have, rocks and things like that around it, and, there's no way for a fire? She goes, oh, yeah. She goes, I've come in before and let it burn out. I said, okay. I said, now what I need you to do, because I looked at her photo, and it was the hyena long neck is what I call it, a Dogman. And I said, you need to go in your house. You need to close all your windows and drapes and stuff. Turn the TV on, get into a movie on Netflix or something, get your mind off of it.
Yeah.
And her mind was on it because she's the one that had the encounter, And she said when she seen that flash go off, she seen something there, but she could not recognize this thing that had like this gray V on its forehead, just a hideous looking thing. You can see its teeth, and you can see its whole arm, and it's got like these marks that are like rings going up its arm like a hyena would. And it was distinctive. There was no doubt on what we were looking at. And so when she gets to her kitchen, and she's just talking along, and she gets to her kitchen, she says, she goes, my boyfriend had taken down the curtains in the kitchen. We had washed everything, and he never rehung these. And I said, is the window open? And she goes, oh, yeah, because it was in March in Kentucky. It was starting to get warm, and she was enjoying the nice, warm night air. And I said, I'm sorry, but you need to shut that and lock it. And I said, try not to peer out there or stare out there. And so she goes, okay. Well, she's very short. She had to get a chair. She had to climb up on the counter to get this done. And so as she's doing it, all of a sudden her voice completely changes. And when I say changes, it was like something had taken over her. Her voice went to like almost a deep tone that didn't even sound familiar to me. And she says, I'm going back out there. And she was very monotone. And I said, oh, no. And I'm not going to say her name on the air. I was like, oh, no, you're not doing that. Don't stop. Listen to me. And I said, why do you think you're doing this? Why do you think you're going out there? And she's like, I need to take more pictures. I said, no, No, you don't.
Right.
And I'm in a panic telling her no because I know what these things can do. I've seen what they can do. I said, you can't go out there. And she's got a double door. She's got a door that's a house, and she's got a doggy door on each one. And then you step on her porch, and then she just has like a screen door. And in the past, when I talked to her, I've always heard this door like smash, like bam, when she goes at it. And I heard that bam.
Oh.
And I'm pleading with her, go back, go back. And the next thing I hear is her scream, and I hear just this ferocious sounding, noises,
Jeez.
like it's growling, and some kind of talk that I could not understand or pick up. It was kind of high pitched in a way, and it was like some kind of language that it must have been speaking. It's hard to even describe, and I definitely couldn't mimic it. The Sasquatch is easy to say that, okay, when they talk, they sound like a cyborg sometimes, they got a harmonica in their throat. They got a weird sound about them. And, you can pick up, like, native words that sound Native American, and you can pick up some English. You can pick up French. It just depends on their geography. Where this was just this weird yapping type of noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to it because I was on speakerphone, and she must have never let go of that phone. It was, like, in her hand tightly, and it must have grabbed her at this point. And I got the story later, but it had grabbed her by the foot at this point and yanked her up in the air, and she's hanging upside down.
Jeez.
And it would have had to walk 150 feet to where she had her bonfire. And it walked down the sidewalk, carrying her upside down like that.
Wow.
And she's screaming, no, 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 you're hurting me, put me down, please, please, put me down. And I'm listening. And, I'm trying to get response out of her. I'm getting nothing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the screams become horrific. It dumped her in the fire.
Oh.
Jeez.
And and the burns that she suffered were extreme. She had used her elbow to, like, get out of it, and when she did, it put it down into the hottest of the coals.
Oh, geez.
So it took all the meat and everything from her bicep down to her middle forearm, completely down to bone.
Oh, my God.
And
Ugh.
she comes back on after I hear all this roaring. After it did it, it lets out this howl, and I heard that howl, and I was like, oh my God, is she alive? What is going on?
Uh-huh.
And so she crawled. Her leg and hip was injured so badly she couldn't get up, and she grabbed the phone, and she's like, are you still there, Shel? I need help. Shel, help me.
Oh, my God.
And I said, I'm going to. And just a week earlier, I had thought about taking out the landline, like we're speaking on now,
Mhm.
and just having a cell phone, because,
Right.
really you can do without it. But
Sure.
I had kept it, and I was glad I did, because I could keep her on the cell phone,
Right.
and through the landline, I was doing everything, calling 911.
Right.
Our 911 was useless. They give me wrong numbers. David was working on the computer for her local area. I couldn't remember the town she was in, and getting information out of her when she was in shock
Oh, yeah.
was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I'm telling her, crawl, just keep crawling.
Right.
Get to your house. And I could hear her get into that door, and I said, now kick the door shut. Will it lock automatic? Do you have an automatic lock? And she said no. And I said, reach up and lock it. She says, I can't move my arm. I can't. And everything was I can't out of her. Those
Right.
were her words.
Sure.
And she kept repeating, Shel, are you coming? Like, she didn't have the concept, I'm 600 miles away from you. I
Right.
can't just come over and help you,
Aw.
And so I tried to keep her talking on the phone. I could tell she was going into a deeper shock because she would just keep repeating my name, repeating. And, she went through PTSD after this,
Mhm.
but I think I did too,
Oh, I bet.
because I was so desperate to get her help. And it took me almost an hour to finally get a phone number, and it happened to be an operator for the fire department that I got to. It was the last number on the list in her town that we found. And this lady answered, and then trying to get her address out of her.
Oh my God.
And so I said, are you close enough to the table that you can pull some mail down? And she finally said yes, after all the Shel, please help me, Shel,
Wow.
She pulls it down, and I said, please read me what the mail says. And it was her boyfriend's name, and she got out the street address.
Wow.
And that's all they needed. And they could hear.
Right.
They could hear her on the other end. And they asked me what had happened to her. And I just told them, I said she was out with her dogs, told her dogs out for the night. I said something happened, and all I know is I think she fell. Because I was really unsure. And they said, we need you. She keeps talking. I told her, she keeps talking about her arm. They said, we need to get out of her, tell her to look at her arm, tell us what she sees.
Hey, Shel.
And so I did. I told her, I said, you need to look at your arm and tell me why it hurts.
Shel.
And she goes, it's melting. It's melting. There's my bones.
Ladies and
And so
gentlemen,
I
we'll
was
be right
thinking
back after
compound
this break,
fracture,
and we'll
break.
continue this
I
journey.
didn't know she had been thrown at the fire.
All right, we'll be right
Don't
back.
become dependent on the medical system. Get and stay healthy naturally with Extendivite. Metals in the liver cause peroxides to get dumped into the blood.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. I'm Brent Thomas, joined by Don Longbeard here, and we are having an amazing night with an amazing guest sharing amazing information. There's a lot of amazing. And Shel, I do apologize. The breaks are pre-programmed. I can't do anything about it. I did try to let you know, but it's just unfortunately it's outside of my control. So I'm sorry if that seemed rude at all. That certainly wasn't my intent.
No, it's okay.
But they just come and it's automatically programmed through the station. There's nothing I can do about it. But I just wanted to apologize because your story is absolutely compelling, and I certainly want to hear how that ended up. But our special guest tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is Shel DIon of Whisper Walkers and Tree Peekers, cryptid research organizations, and she's joining us tonight to talk about the Dogmen and the wolf people. And you were just talking about the story of the woman was carried, your friend, and was thrown into the fire, was able to get herself in the house, and I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, well, through 911 and everything, finally able to get firefighters to get there. Okay. And they literally had to break into her home to get to her. They were on the phone with me the whole entire time. Wow. And then when they got in there, the fireman picked up the phone, and I could hear another fireman say, "I smell somebody's burning. There's been human flesh. I smell it burnt." Mm-hmm. And then they found her. And so that's the first inkling that I had that she had been burned, because she was in such shock. She couldn't have a conversation. And so there is a picture that goes with the story, and there's damage to her body that took her over a year to recover. Wow. The burns were very extensive, and the psychological damage is extreme. And she had to keep that job she had. And after that incident, of course, she was in the hospital, but after that incident, there's been numerous incidents at her work where she's in a guard shack, and she guards what would be like where there's there's a factory there. I don't know what they do there. She has watched men come in there, identify themselves as a FBI, and they come in there with rigs and stuff that were strange. She'd never seen trucks like this. Wow. And she said one of the trucks, when they left after it got in daylight and they were checking out around 7 a.m., she said one of these trucks had a seat bolted up in the back of it. It was very high off the ground. And she said it had one of those giant machine guns you would see on TV where, they're fighting in a war. Wow. And she said that, she says, was very compelling to me as to what they were doing out there and how much firepower they had and what was in those containers when they left. She didn't know. She couldn't see. She wasn't spoken to. It was let us in and open the gate so we can get out. And so there's a lot of evidence there. Being Kentucky, too, also, there's just so many stories from Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I don't doubt for a minute what happened to her because I looked at the photos. Wow. Recently, she went back out to leave. Something had just dug its claws into the back of her bumper. Everybody has a plastic bumper these days. Oh, right. And lifted up the back of her vehicle so that her putting it in reverse, she couldn't get away. She was just spinning her tires. Wow. And she couldn't see what it was. She said looking in her rearview mirror, even though she has a Blazer type vehicle, Envoy, something like that, she said it took up the whole width back there, and all she could see was something hairy and brown. Then the car slammed down and was shoved forward, even though it was in reverse, shoved forward over the top of a parking curb. She's had numerous, and she's been looking and looking and looking for another job. And like most of us Americans, you just can't quit your job, and you got to have income. Yeah. And so the poor girl walks with a cane sometimes because of the damage that it did to her piriformis muscle in her hip. I don't know if you guys know what that is. I'll explain that real quick. It's actually the main muscle that holds your femur, or your biggest bone in your thigh. You only have one bone in your thigh, but your biggest muscle there that holds your thigh onto your body. And it's caused many problems. It's tilted the pelvis. It's causing her great pain. She's suffering greatly from it, and the dog man, the dog soldier, is nothing to mess with. And as far as the wolf creatures go, you know what? Observe from a distance. If they gift you, you just try to treat them like a Sasquatch. Be polite with them. Don't trigger them, of course. I wouldn't trigger any of this stuff. Sasquatch either. They tend to run hot too. The eye, giving some hints here, with the eye shine, the eye glow, it's distinctly different when you're dealing with the canines because of the shape of it. It's smaller, usually not as bright, and it's off to the sides of the head, and it's more almond shaped than it's more like a regular dog would be. When you're dealing with Sasquatch, sometimes they look like a jack-o'-lantern that you just cut circles out of their eyes, or you can get that whole V kind of shape to them, where it's kind of straight on the outside and it narrows down towards the nose, where they have the hooded nose. So that should help you if you're in the night and you happen to see eye shine, eye glow. Of course, if it's anything yellow and in the whole range of yellow, orange, red, I would caution anybody to just leave the area and do it as quickly as you possibly can. Please do not turn your back on these things. Right. And know that if you have them outside your house, not making eye contact with them is crucial, because somehow making eye contact with them, they can control you in some way. And I think that has to do with maybe the whole alien agenda part of them being made with the U.S. government, of course. So who knows what they got in them? Mm-hmm. I don't. Right. And I wouldn't claim to. Right. But whatever it is, it's very ugly, it's very evil, it's very nasty, and it's very dangerous.
Okay, so...
And so...
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Shel. Go ahead.
Go. No, go.
Okay, so you're saying that the dog soldiers are experimental beings that are being mixed DNA from alien and this, that, or the other thing. Is that correct?
In my opinion, okay. Yes. And mm-hmm. From what I've experienced with the UFO contents and them being in the vicinity, and the government having something to do with that also, putting the three of them all together in many different instances, and from many different witnesses, and from my own, what I witnessed myself here, I have to make that conclusion.
Wow. Yeah, because I remember you said something early on in the show already about the U.S. government wanting something on the ground that could be, bullet resistant, and things like that. So that would make perfect sense. Now, regarding the wolf people, are these naturally evolved creatures, or are they interdimensional, or what is your thoughts on that?
I think they're interdimensional because they've exhibited some of the same abilities that Sasquatch does. With them having, to me, it just strikes me too coincidental, if you will, that you have 63% human with Sasquatch, and you have 63% human with the wolf creature. Okay. 37% human, or something unknown to the earth with the Sasquatch and mixed with human. And then you got the wolf creature that's 63% human and 37% canine, and it looks it. So obviously I think they have been here a very, very, very long time. It's not the same amount of time we have, close to it, because there are so many depictions in our history from Native Americans, Sumerians, you've got the Anubis, however you say his name. I always probably screw that one up.
Anubis,
but
yep.
Anyway, there's so many depictions and stories of werewolves and things like that. I definitely think it's something that's always been here. And, who's to say what created us, or, what come up with our DNA,
Right.
at this point, I guess none of us know until we pass over
Right.
and really know if there's another side and really know if everything that we believe in and we're putting our heart into is in fact true.
Right.
Everybody can strongly argue their Christianity, can strongly argue many different things, but I would have never questioned any of this until I got into research.
Right.
And getting into research, if it doesn't open your eyes, then you're not going about it right. Because there's just things you can't explain. There's things that all I can do is tell you what I know, what I've experienced.
Right.
I can't tell you how that the earth was created and what was here when creation was made, because I wasn't here. Neither were you. Neither was a lot of people.
Right.
Exactly.
I do believe that these canine entities probably have roamed the earth as long as the Sasquatch people as well, just like us. We've gone through periods of evolution. I'm sure that they have too. And their evolution is leading them more and more to a curiosity of us, or we wouldn't be having so many encounters of people reporting them.
Right.
I know that I personally will sit and listen to so many encounters, and I go, oh, well, that was a wolf creature, because they got away. The people it turned and walked away, or went down on all fours and ran away, or the people were fine afterwards, even though they're traumatized.
Right.
I think those instances were probably not the Dogman, dog soldier. Then there's other instances where it was horrific, and I could tell you tons of stories, but I would be breaching so many different people's swore to secrecy. I would love to tell you some of these stories. They're absolutely so far out there, you would just, melt your mind. But I can't, because I swore myself to secrecy when they come to me in confidence for help.
Absolutely.
And the only kind of help that I can really offer people when it comes to this, if you're getting, you got to look at the ground. You got to decipher what it is you're dealing with. If it is the dog soldier, if it is the giant canine that looks like it's uncomfortable in its skin and its head too big for its body, good luck. And I'll pray for you. And, contact me and I'll help you any way I can. I can give you ideas. I have to live around them, and we're still kicking it. So,
Right.
I can help people, but they got to contact me to do that. And the best way, easiest way is just, go to the like page, Whisper Walkers, or, Shel, Kaoke, DIon, DIon. So it's very easy to get a hold of me. Just send me a message or whatever. I don't typically these days just answer a friend request because somebody sent it. Send me a message. Tell me what it is you need.
Right.
And, I can try and help you all I can. But as far as running to you and going and investigating after the incident, it's silly.
Not gonna happen.
Because
Yeah.
I've had that time and time again, and it's fruitless. Then I would be sitting home writing books like Linda Godfrey. All I'm going to get is what happened, and I don't have any of the evidence from the actual crime scene. What I have spoke to you about, I actually have evidence of what happened. I have photographs of that immediate moment and when that happened, that story happened.
Sure.
I don't like to tell anything that I don't have evidence to prove what I'm saying or something to back it up.
Right.
Now, historically speaking, you're right. There has been reports of these kind of creatures for as long as there's been recorded history. I mean, even way back into the Dark Ages, the cynocephaly was a dog soldier that had their own armies that people encountered and were recorded back in the ancient times. So this is not a new phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that's been around in some form or another for as long as we have, and so that's dead on. I couldn't agree with you more about that because I think a lot of people like to think that some of these things are just offshoots of popular culture or science fiction, but they go back prior to that. There's reports of these things way back before there was science fiction, as we understand it. So
It's been my experience. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
no, go ahead.
It's been my experience, not with just what we're talking about here, but other things that I would have never had anything to do with, and yet I got the evidence because it happened while I was out there doing my Sasquatch research. It may have been years ago, or it may have been, within the last 2 years or so, where, you're just on your back porch, and this will blow your mind. A gnome that's 3 foot tall run across the yard while I had a thermal in my hand, run right through the garden, and I got a photo of it.
That's
amazing. A thermal photo, but it's a photo. And it's like, seriously? That's nothing I would have ever believed in. The Pukwudgie, I have photographs of all this stuff, and, I would have never believed it. So what I could say about all of this, and it's a blanket statement, is I think fairy tales and stories and stuff like that came to us when we were children, and have been passed on through the years. I don't think stories are born from just nothing or somebody's imagination. When they are stories that are so
steeped in
so
history,
known.
Yeah.
They had to been. The geography was separating continents at that time where people didn't have each other to talk to, but yet you have similar stories or fairy tales that come from different geography. And so something's to be said for the troll under the bridge. Something's to be said for, the wicked little gnome and, things like that. I do believe that stories are born from something.
Right.
We all believe in, well, I shouldn't say we all believe in, but the majority of us believe in God, Jesus, Mother Mary, stuff. But what proof do we have of that? It's a story. It's a story that's so strong and told by so many people and written, down in history that people believe. And so I don't think it's any different with these cryptids and all these other things like Nessie and you name it. You name a cryptid and there's a story to go along with it.
Oh, yeah.
And now there's even new things that are popping up that people go, oh my. At least I do.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Hey, Shel, we've got just under 10 minutes left on the show. I have one more question that a really good friend of ours is asking in the chat room. Naysay, who happened to be on the show last night, you mentioned he wants to know. You mentioned that sometimes the wolf people will gift you or give you a charm or something. He was wondering what kind of a gift that would be. Would that be like a special kind of rock, or would it be an actual little
That's
craft?
always something natural, or if they find a toy, or something out in the middle of nowhere, whatever.
Just something
and
they find
it's something
interesting?
that is what they would call belonging to our people.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of their way of giving it back or something.
Okay.
I had, and we don't live anywhere near the sea, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live in central Illinois. A shell. Who would get a conch shell as a gift?
Wow.
Yeah, that's quite a journey.
So that's what I mean by gifting. And their prints is what proves that that's where it came from. Otherwise I could say, oh, well, that was a Sasquatch, or it was a neighbor, or it was this, or it was that. But, where it was put and the evidence was there as to what left it, that's what made me say that.
Wow. That's crazy.
Something else I was going to say, and it just escaped my mind. I wanted to get on the show before I left. Do you have any more questions while I think about that? Is there any other questions in that chat room that need answered?
I think you actually went over quite a few of them, because I asked about their speech or their communication. You said you're not really clear on that, and then people asked how long have they been on the earth, and what I extrapolate out of that is that the wolf people have been here for a long, long time. However,
I agree.
The dog soldier is more of a recent genetic experiment. So
Agrees.
okay, and
The one thing we didn't talk about much would be the anubis, which I wanted to touch on that, and the dire wolf. Maybe we could get to some of those more.
We got about 5 minutes left.
Off the shoot things later.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to speak of the rake. I have a lot of people coming at me about the rake.
Yeah, please.
I do have encounters with that.
Would love to talk about that.
Maybe another show.
Right.
I think so.
Maybe another time.
Hey, Shel, just one more quick question, if I could. Somebody is really wanting to know what their hands look like. What do the dog soldier's hands look like? Do they look like elongated fingers? Are they more paw-like?
Yes, I have pictures. You get a mid-tarsal break with their feet, and like I said, 3 toes. Their hands are more like ours. Either species, you're talking 5 fingers on the hand.
Right.
But with the dog soldier, one thing that I noticed is a little thicker and a webbing between the fingers and stuff like that, and an actual pad on the bottom of the palm.
Okay.
So when they walk, it's on all fours and stuff. You're still getting a canine print.
Right. Cool. Because we understand that occasionally Sasquatch also walks on all fours to confuse their trail. So that is
usually when the Sasquatch do that, they do the whole knuckle thing.
Okay.
More of a monkey type of run.
Okay. Well, that makes
when
sense,
they do it, and it's usually the young that do it. I do have a picture of a Sasquatch this last spring. It was so high. It was in the spring. It was closer to like a week or two before 4th of July, so we were into the summer, and it was so freaking hot. And it was not the time of day I like to take pictures because the sun was straight up overhead, and it really bounced off the shiny beans that were growing in the field and stuff. He was actually crawling through it, and if you and I would have crawled through it, the beans would have been rubbing our belly, and you wouldn't have seen our legs and stuff. But I could see his feet, his legs, his belly, everything. He's just giant.
Wow.
And he was crawling with his feet behind him and on his hands and knees, like we would if we get down on the floor and play with our kids and let them, I'll give you a horsey back ride, things like that.
Right.
Wow.
That's what he was doing, and I couldn't believe it. I have seen them 4-wheel where their legs and their arms are close to the same length, and they can run at speeds that are unbelievable and remind you when you see it from behind. I was like, when I first seen it, it went right past my office window, and I was like, oh my God, that looked like a grizzly bear.
Right.
There's no grizzly bears in Illinois.
Hey, Shel.
So
yeah, we're almost there. How about you give out your contact information, where you're willing to be contacted at, and because we've got some people who really would like to get in touch with you or check out your Facebook pages.
Okay, yeah. Well, Whisper Walkers like page, Tree Peekers like page. It usually has a picture.
That's Facebook
There's
page?
another Tree Peeker page that's actually got like a book cover on it. That would be Freeman Young's. He's my partner, but he doesn't get into anything but Sasquatch. Where I'm all over the place with the cryptids. I have retired, but that doesn't stop me from helping people and guiding them, telling them. So hit my Facebook up, Shel, Shel, Kaoke, Kaoke, and DIon, DIon. So I have my Facebook set to where just about anybody can contact me. So send me a message. I'm not going to just accept friend requests. So if you want to talk to me, it better come with a message, or you'll probably just get deleted.
All right.
That's how it goes.
There you go. Excellent.
Well, Shel, after the show, just hang up the Skype. We will connect with you right away again after and just kind of recap it if you don't mind. But thank you so much for being on the show. That was it's been a brilliant visit and a brilliant journey, and I can't thank you enough for sharing it here on the portal.
Still need more.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, stick around here on TFR iHeart. Tune in and TalkStream Live for Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie. Should be coming up next. Make sure to like the stream on Facebook or on YouTube, rather, and let us know that you're enjoying what you're seeing here. But we will be back, of course, on Wednesday night for more of the Paranormal Portal. Don and I should be stirring up some kind of mayhem, but that's a YouTube-only show. So find us on youtube.com/Paranormal Portal and subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. And we will be back on Wednesday. But other than that, it's just been a brilliant show. And obviously, Shel, you got to come back as soon as you're able. We have so much more ground to cover.
Always.
All right,
Okay,
my lady.
no
Thank you
problem.
so much for
Talk
being
to
here.
you all soon. God bless you all. Thank you for listening.
All right, we'll be calling you in just a few minutes, Shel. But everyone else, we
Okay.
love you. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. And stick around for Beyond the Veil coming up next. And we will see you on Wednesday.
See ya.
See ya.